Water and the end result of the Exodus. What's happened after we've left to that land. And as it comes to water, we are told specifically that He is going to bring us and give us springs. Now, while we're on the Exodus, He's given us manna for the food, and again, the desert does not have enough food for us to live. We're going with 2 to 3 million people. There's going to be a lot of animals with us. It does not have the food to sustain us. Yet, our Creator is taking care of that. He's provided food. It's a desert environment. It couldn't keep 100 people alive. Yet our Creator is going to keep between 2 and 3 million of us alive, plus the animals. And not just that we're alive with the water. We're going to be using water for our food. If you're going to make flour, you don't just crush manna and just say, let me cook it into a cake. You're going to add either a water or a milk to make it into a bread. And that will be available. That amount of water. He even says He's going to have enough for us to bathe with. Now, when you start getting to bathing, that's the highest level of what I'll call, or washing your clothes, in fact. And He says we'll be washing our clothes. When you get to that level, water is in pure abundance, ultimate abundance. And as we go through the path of the Exodus, as we cross, leave Egypt and go through the Red Sea, and we come over and we get to Mount Sinai, and we're getting some paths to get to Mount Sinai, and we're going to sit at Mount Sinai for probably around 9 months before we actually take out and start what I'll call the path on the Exodus. But during that 9-month period, we're there. The taps had been turned on. Now, what's interesting is when, and I believe it's actually our Messiah who came down and met Moses on Mount Sinai, and he walked, and it says, where he walked, it turned to sapphire. And there's a belief that the Ten Commandments are also in this sapphire. The abyss, scientists have discovered where that water is, and it's called ringwoodite. It just happens, it's magnesium silicate, and it just happens to look dark blue like a sapphire. And so as our Creator, as our Messiah is walking on Mount Sinai, and each step becomes that, is that ringwoodite? It's just an interesting thing that water would come up. He is a source of water in the desert. He is life. He is a source of bread in the desert. He's a source of life. And so, and again, it comes because the Creator is allowing that to happen. Our worship goes to the Creator. The Son is the one who's doing this during that time, keeping us alive, taking care of that, but that's with the will of the Father. But does He turn off that spring at Mount Sinai? Or does He turn off any of the springs? As they start coming from the deep, each time we do an encampment, He says this is where you're going to do the encampment, because that's where He's going to turn on a spring. Does He turn those off? And we don't have any indication one way or the other. What is interesting is there is a scientist in South Africa who started doing a determination on the way that you de-desertification, getting rid of deserts. And the way that he did that, and he did it because he originally thought that the animals were causing the devastation of the environment, so he went out and killed a tremendous number of elephants. Had the South African government agreed with his assessment. It was based by the scientific evidence of the time, so they went out and killed a bunch of evidence, and then the environment got much worse, and they realized the elephants were actually saving the desert and keeping the desert from encroaching. And since that point in time, he's realized that herds of animals are actually the things that actually will keep back the desert. We will have our herds with us. And there's a very specific path. Now, we also have from the Torah that we are not to do this, within 1 year. And that is Exodus 23:29. I will not drive them out before you in a single year. Otherwise, the land would become desolate and wild animals would multiply against you. Little by little I will drive them out ahead of you until you become fruitful and possess the land. Now we know as we go back, he says, basically he's shortened the time. Well, we only have 2.5 years. We have 3.5 years for the Exodus, but to clear out the land, we only have 2.5 years. And a little bit less than that. So he's complied with the issue that he can't do it in a single year, because that's Torah. But he's allowing us to do it as fast as we can to get it done. But what's also happening during that period of time is we are improving the desert, the area where we go through. Now we're cleansing it, we're wiping it out from people, but we're actually, and especially when you consider these springs that are giving, if you're providing water for 3 million people and the animals keep getting bigger as we go along. So the amount of water is, again, incredible. And I mean incredible levels. Because I doubt we're just grabbing the mud and trying to squish the water out of the mud. I would imagine it's going to be actually clear water. You put a glass in there, it's that clear. Again, it's coming up from the earth. It's for this ringwoodite. Ringwoodite holds 3 times the amount of water that's in all the oceans combined. And that's where he's going to be pushing this water to during the millennial reign, is to the kingdom. Which is interesting for a number of other issues. Because we're also told that he is going to, if they don't come to the tabernacle, to the temple for these feasts, they won't have rain. Well, to me, that sounds like the rest of the world is becoming a desert. If they're not getting rain, that water goes away kind of quickly, and if the world is a desert environment and there's only one spot that's not, and that would be the kingdom, which has massive amounts of water coming up. Great quality water too, from the depths. But as I'm looking at this thing, as we go through, I don't know if those springs cut off. And that's an interesting thing to think about as we go through the land. As we're clearing out the outer reaches. Do those springs cut off? Again, for Mount Sinai, it's there for 9 months. You can't be with that much water for 9 months and not have it become an oasis. The amount of growth around there would be incredible. It's just an interesting thing, And do any of the others cut off? I don't know. They're going to be basically in our land, other than when we go outside to Nineveh. Maybe those things close down. Maybe they don't. I don't know. It's an interesting thing that there, again, that amount of water. Now we're also told, again, from the abyss, what we have, where we know this is happening, is in Deuteronomy 8. Now again, the word for the abyss is Tehom. And whenever my computer decides it wants to work. And in Deuteronomy 8:7, which again, Tehom is water from the deep. In Deuteronomy 8:7, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with brooks, streams, and Tehom, deep springs, gushing into the valleys and hills. Gushing. So, again, we're going to have water. Water's not going to be our worry when we go back to the land. Now, interestingly enough, the tribal blessings in Deuteronomy 33, as it pertains to Joseph, and it says about Joseph, he said, "May the Lord bless his land with the precious dew from heaven above, and with the deep waters that lie below." That's Tehom. His land has more of that. And I don't want to get into that. Let's not do that one next. But I would think obviously his land may have more or most of these deep springs as we go back. Don't know. But I do know that as we go through the Exodus, we will have these deep springs providing for us. And again, I would think that's pretty much where we put our livestock, is in that outside area, which allows us to put the fruits and grains and things like that in our land, and we tend the flocks on the backside. Just a thought.